All right, so let's look at your number 2. Your number 2 says x squared minus 12 minus x. Let me ask you, is this in the standard form or not? It's not, right? Because your standard form says, thank you, says x squared plus bx minus c equals 0. The sign, it doesn't have to be what sign, but it has to be in this format. Well, it's not arranged, so we need to rearrange this first so that it should look like this. And then you decide if you want to do factoring or if you do the formula, quadratic formula, and then you will need to learn about the graphing for decimals as well. So I'll need to switch this to this other side because I want my x squared positive. So let me see. If I have x squared, this becomes a positive x. And this 12 did not move, so it will just stay as 12 equals 0. Right? So now I will be ready to identify my A, B, and C. So let me just write it here. A is a 1. B is the number before the x, which is imaginary 1, so that's a 1. And the C is the constant, which is a negative 12. Do I have to do this all the time? No, but then in case I do factoring, in case I wanted to solve for the x root using the quadratic formula and I need the discriminant and I need the vertex, I would need all these details. Okay, so let me see. If I want to do factoring first, let's do the strategy for factoring first. Okay, strategy 1, factoring by manual factoring. So you know this is a positive, so it's, I'm going to write it down again, x squared plus x minus 12. This is subtraction, right? When you subtract, you'll have to look for the factors of 12 and 1, 6 times 2, and 3 times 4, which among here, when you subtract, gives you a middle term 1. Okay, 12 minus 1 does not give me a 1x. 6 minus 2 does not give me a 1. 3 minus 4 or 4 minus 3 gives me a 1x, so I will use these. Therefore, my factors will be x group and x, and this will be 3 and this will be 4. Can you exchange them? Yes, you can. Just that's what we learned from the last few weeks. You could exchange this. This could be 4, this could be 3, doesn't matter. But what you wanted to know, since you are subtracting, 1 is a plus, because you're subtracting, 1 is a plus, 1 is a minus. But which one will get what sign? Well, you have to look at your middle term. Middle term says positive. Therefore, the bigger number gets the positive. The smaller number gets the negative. So this is the factoring part. That should be equal to 0 because it says equal to 0. Now you're going to be solving for the root. Solving for the root. Solving for the root, you just have to separate these two. So 1 will be x minus 3 equals 0. That's for this one. Then x plus 4 equals 0. That's for this one. You separate them. But since they're two x values, so you just want to label that as x sub 1 and the other one is x sub 2. After that, you solve these for x. Solving for x sub 1, switch that over there, it becomes a 3. You want to isolate x. Okay? You isolate the x variable. The same thing here, x sub 2 is equals to, you move that there, it becomes a minus 4. What this one means is that this is your root. And these are the roots, these two. And these are your roots, okay? Well, what are roots, Ms. Dallas? Well, actually, roots are just the same thing with the graph. So we do know that recalling your discriminant factors, or discriminant, where will discriminant come in? Discriminant, this is just in case you don't have access to a calculator. Your discriminant says b squared minus 4ac. You wanted to know if it's more than 0, less than 0, or equal to 0. That's what you have here. You have to memorize that. Is it more than 0? Is it less than 0 or is it equal to 0? If it's equal to 0, it only have one touch on the x-axis. So let's see. My b here is 1 squared minus 4 times 1, and that is a 12. So it's a negative 12. How much is that? So that is 1 plus 48. 4 times 12 is 48. Negative times negative is a plus. Well, actually, it's a 49, and 49 is greater than 0, right? Therefore, it has two roots. So the question will be, what are your two roots? These are your two roots. They go together. You have to learn both, okay? So what if I'm going to look at them in the Desmos. So to check your work in the Desmos, okay, so are you all seeing my screen?
Yes.
You see my screen? Or no? Oh, okay. So I was just wondering if you could see the whole screen. Can you see the Desmos too? Okay, so I was just like, did they see the screen? Okay, so here you have x squared, and then the other one, this one here, it says x squared and then a plus x. So I'm gonna change this into a plus x, and this one will be a minus 12. And let's change the 5 into 12. Okay, so I won't put the 0 because I put the y already. What I want is just really the equation of x squared plus x minus 12. The 0, I won't put it. So here, if you notice it, I'm going to click on that. It actually gives me the same thing. So on the Desmos, this is the second one, the graphing part. And in the graphing, we use Desmos. So in the Desmos, it says, hey, the graph looks like this. It's kind of like, not on the perfect, but it should be on this one, and it's facing upward. This is negative 4, 0, and this is 3, 0. Now, aren't these roots the same as the roots that you have with 3 and 4? They are the same, right? So we're good. So this is the second strategy. Now the question is, what if you don't have a Desmos calculator to look at that quickly? And what if it is not factorable? What if you cannot factor them, just like what we had with the previous activity? The last resort will be to use the quadratic formula. This is another step. This is for TSI purposes, the quadratic formula. Okay, the quadratic formula says x, to solve for the x, which are your roots, will be negative b plus minus the root of the b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That is your formula. Where will I get my b and the 4 and the a and the c? Well, let's go back to your values that we identified. We rearrange the whole equation, make sure that it is on the standard form, and a should be 1, b 1, and c is 12. Once we get that, we just have to plug in to the formula that we have here. So x here will be negative b, which is 1, so it should be negative 1, plus minus, and it says square the 1, so meaning 1 times 1 gives me a 1, minus 4 times a is a 1. What about 12? 12 is a negative 12 over 2 times 1. Okay, so now I just plugged in the values. I'm going to solve for the x this time. So this time I just need to get that one. So negative 1 plus minus the root of 4 times 12 is 48. Negative times negative is positive. So it's going to be 1 plus 48 over 2. And that will be negative 1 plus minus the root of 49. So what number, always write the 2, don't forget the 2. What number, when you multiply by itself, gives you 49? That is 7, right? The root of 7. So it will be negative 1 plus minus 7 over 2. Now, if you notice, the radical sign is no longer there. We extracted the root of 49, which is 7. Now you could separate them. X sub 1 will be equal to -1 plus 7 over 2, because that's a plus. Do the plus first. -1 plus 7 over 2. That's this one. Bar. X sub 2 will be -1 minus 7 over 2. That's -1 minus 7 over 2. You separate them. Then you solve. -1 plus 7 is 6. Divided by 2 is 3. This one, you get -1 and -7 gives me -8 over 2. It gives me -4. Aren't they the same? They're actually the same with what you got from the factoring 3 and -4. They are the same, but there are two ways. This is the first way. If you could factor it, you'll get 3 and -4. But if you cannot factor it and you don't have access to the calculator like Desmos, this is very easy. It's fast. But if you don't have access to Desmos, you have to learn how to apply the quadratic formula. Just have to memorize that and plug in your numbers. And then the rest are all arithmetic skills. Okay? Let me stop my recording from there.